When you have to heal your organs, you need to understand this principle of pure, impure. The spleen has to take this good stuff out, and it's a really hard job. So your task, since you have a lot of control over what you're putting into your mouth, is to eat foods that are very, very simple for the spleen to separate. Christian Nix here, back again. If you're just finding the Pivot Protocol for the first time, welcome. I'm shooting this video to talk about what really amounts to one of the very highest level concepts that you could possibly learn about healing digestive disorders. It's the important point about the pure and the impure. This is a function that has to do with your spleen. Your spleen has to separate out two components of food and waste. And it's a big, big responsibility. In fact, you could say that this is the crucial thing that either determines whether you pivot toward illness or you pivot toward health. Because if the spleen can do this job, essentially your digestive function your digestive system will continue to operate way, 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 way late into your twilight years. Okay? So get the concept. The other point I want to make before I get into this and explain is, look, the highest level medical concepts that I have to teach you can still be understood by about a 12-year-old. Now, I understand that nobody's ever taught you this medical system. This is all brand new stuff to you. This is probably really freaky to hear somebody teach something like this. But what's more freaky is that it actually works, and that, right, if you kind of follow what I'm saying and you get the logic of the Pivot Protocol system, because there is a logic here. Okay, so we know, if you're looking at this video and you're listening to me talk, you know that modern medicine has really no solution for something like acid reflux. It's obvious. You wouldn't be here if there was a solution in modern medicine. If acid blockers worked, we would all be healed and nobody would be sick. This concept about how the spleen has to separate out the pure versus the impure, and how you help your spleen do this, is one of the highest level things that you could possibly learn, but I'm going to make it very simple for you. So here we go. When you eat, and I talk about this in the protocol, students of the Pivot Protocol have heard this 100 times, and there's a reason that I'm repeating it over and over. You need to drill this into your cranium and try to make sense, a mental picture of what's happening inside your body. That's what I want you to be thinking about when I explain this. When you put food in the pot, and the pot is your stomach, right? You put food into the pot of the stomach, and the spleen is the fire under the pot. And that fire has to, metaphorically, cook the food and then extract the nutrients. Like they talk about it as a process of distillation. In other words, the spleen has to go to work, and the good stuff comes out of the food that you're going to use to nourish your body. And that gets sent, essentially, it gets absorbed into the blood, and the blood is then pumped around the body to nourish all the tissues. Okay, it's a simple, simple metaphor. Don't try to shoehorn in a bunch of biomedical, right, molecular biology kind of biomedical theory. Medical systems are meant to be self-contained systems. The system that I'm teaching you, the ancient system that I learned from my mentor, is far, far more consistent internally in terms of the, right, if we set up a bunch of logical assumptions about how your body works, this ancient system is really consistent within its own logical system. Modern medicine is very inconsistent with its logic, right? I mean, there's no logical explanation for if you block stomach acid, that's going to make you well again. You need your stomach acid. And most people with digestive illness don't have enough stomach acid. So blocking it is really stupid. That's very illogical, right? And if you ask doctors and you hold their feet to the fire about this, they will tell you that it's a super illogical thing to do. It doesn't matter. This is the tool that they've been given. This is what the drug companies say. This is what the insurance people will pay for. So you get another pill to block stomach acid. That's the truth. That's the reality of the medical system as we experience it as patients. The logic in the modern medical system, which says block stomach acid, oh, you know, that didn't work. Let's take out a part of your intestines and use surgery. Let's cut open the abdomen and then let's do surgery on hiatal hernia. And it's like, look, don't some of those things come with risks? Like, if you could heal reflux on its own, if you could heal on your own, wouldn't that be a better approach, right? And they look completely over that. They absolutely ignore it in favor of, all these other things like, gee, that's not going to cause any complications down the road. Just cutting open the body and, let's take out a part of your small intestines or give you a colostomy bag. What a barrel of laughs that is, right? All of those things are really, really poor solutions, whereas this ancient system has really self-consistent logic. So I don't want you to choke over, oh, what's he talking about? The spleen doesn't do that, right? Inevitably, I always have medical people who write me, they're like, well, I really enjoyed what you were saying, but then I figured you're an idiot because, the spleen does this, this, and this. It's like, yeah, in biomedical terms, we can argue about whether or not these functions from the ancient medical system to modern biomedicine are one-for-one correspondence. I can tell you now that they're not, but don't let that trip you up. You don't need a medical degree to understand what I'm saying. The stomach is the pot, the spleen is the fire under the pot. When the spleen is young and healthy, like when you're 19, for example, you can put anything in the pot. If you're active, you can put anything in the pot, pretty much, right? I was an athlete when I was a kid, right? Most people are far more active when they're 19, say, than when they're 59, right? You do slow down. I mean, it's normal, right? But in general, if your body's working and you're otherwise healthy, you can put cheeseburgers, coffee, Coke, fries, like all the crap that you can't eat later in life. You can put anything in the pot, and the spleen is very strong, and it still uses that fuel, right, as nourishment for the body, right, to a greater or lesser degree. Obviously, I'm exaggerating for a point here. You still have to eat good food if you want to turn out healthy, right, later in life. But my point is, the spleen is very strong. The spleen, the fire under the pot is very, very strong when you're young. And this, one of the spleen's functions, the primary function, we say digestion in the pivot protocol, in the context of what I'm teaching you. Digestion is exactly these two things. It is, one, that you are assimilating good nourishment. That means the spleen is able to extract nutrients and, right, the nourishment in the food that you eat, assuming that you're eating good food, right, nourishing food. Your spleen is able to extract out the good stuff, and you can assimilate that through your intestinal lining into your bloodstream. And then the body spreads that nourishment around to the tissues via the blood, right? Your heart pumps all of that nourishment through the blood, and the blood provides good nourishment to all the various tissues of the body. Okay, that's not too far-fetched. That's one half of digestion. The second part of digestion is elimination. You must get rid of waste on a normal basis. Very often, once you develop a digestive illness, you build up dampness in the body. I talk about this, right? You build up dampness inside the body, and the boss called. A lot of times what happens when the digestive system breaks down is you develop dampness, and dampness hangs around, that's mucus, right, inside your in your organs. It's coming from the spleen. A weak spleen produces dampness, and dampness goes into your intestines, and it gums up the works, right? It's like a big blockage in the digestive tract. But you get a lot of mucus on the intestinal wall, and you cannot get food through that mucus into your bloodstream. And so you pass undigested food, right? This is very common with stuff like IBS, all kinds of like Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, right? You'll get half digested food in your stool, right? Because your body can't absorb it, okay? And also then a lot of this waste hangs around on the wall of the intestine. You get a bunch of waste and, right, fecal matter and just like bad, broken down, rotting food that is stuck inside your body and is clinging to the walls of the intestines, right? This is how you get pockets of diverticula and things like this. You have pockets of waste hanging around inside your body. Well, if that waste stays around in there, you get what's called leaky gut, where bacteria that clings to that waste and feeds off of it. You have tons and tons of bacteria inside your intestines, obviously. And so that bacteria finally does get into your bloodstream, or is, slowly leaking into your bloodstream. This is called leaky gut syndrome. And ultimately you develop autoimmune disease, right? Because you have a lot of bacteria getting into the bloodstream, and the body looks at that as a type of systemic infection, right? It's akin to sepsis, right? You start developing symptoms all over the body because the bacteria is spreading everywhere, and the body just can't fight it all. So it fights everything, and you're wearing your immune system out, and your body is basically running on empty at that point. Okay, so absorption and assimilation of good nutrients, and elimination of waste, meaning we don't want a lot of dampness. You want to prevent dampness from taking a hold inside your intestines, especially, but from spreading all around your body. Now, I talk about dampness elsewhere, so I won't say more about it, but just get the gist here. That's a big responsibility. The primary organ that is tagged with that job is your spleen. So this ability to separate the pure from the impure is the primary task of your pivot. You don't want to overwhelm the spleen. So I talk about how when your liver gets hotter and your stomach gets hotter, you eat more often, that overwhelms the spleen. Then it can't separate the pure from the impure. You pass it, half digested food, you get waste and food stagnation and dampness all building up. Your body can't absorb good nutrients anymore because it's overwhelmed, and your body can't eliminate waste. And your health is a disaster. It's almost like reflux is the least of your concerns at some point, right? I mean, if you go down that path far enough and you get sick enough, long enough, reflux is the least of your problems. Trust me. Okay. And there will be people watching this video who are nodding their head like, hey, he's speaking the truth, because it's a disaster when you get that sick. Okay. But if we trace it all back, we trace it back to the spleen's ability to separate the pure from the impure. So what do you do about this? Well, you want your spleen as recovered as it can be. I say this over and over to people. You cannot stimulate the spleen back to health. The problem is that it's too exhausted. You can't keep mashing down on the gas pedal and demand that your spleen works harder, especially if you're over age 35 or 40. Almost all of my students are. So if you're watching this, right, chances are you're in the second half of life and your spleen is way past its prime. After about age 30 to 40 years old, somewhere around 35, the spleen hits the top of the arc and that's it, which means you have to eat differently in the second half of life, which is why the pivot protocol is so helpful, because I'm showing you how to eat after your spleen has already given up the ghost and it's no longer, working at a high professional level the way it used to. In general, now I give you tons of ways to recover your spleen. None of them are stimulating. That's a clue, right? There's all kinds of ways for your spleen to recover. And if you know how to do those, or if you want to know how to do those, you should be deep into the pivot protocol material if you're not already, okay? But the primary principle, the general thing that you have to get again, back to the first thing I said, get a clear mental picture. You don't want the spleen to do a lot of work to separate the pure and the impure. So let me give you an example. I live kind of out in the sticks. I'm actually in the Caribbean. It's very simple living here. I love it. I have food growing in the backyard. Anybody who grows a garden, especially a good time to grow a garden, by the way, right? If food supplies are going to be disrupted, you should be growing your own food, at least to supplement what you're not going to be able to get any longer at the store. So I grow a garden because I like it. I like having fresh greens in my backyard and all the rest. And so when I'm here, it's really, really easy for me to keep my spleen healthy. And for this function of pure from impure, I can tell the difference, because when I go to a place like Boston, oh my God, we ate, what did I have? I had the pappardelle at an Italian place that's like pasta with boar meat and tomato sauce. And I know I had a gin tonic with it, and I probably had some apple pie afterward, right? And all of these flavors, all of these very delicious, tons of different kinds of things mixing together. And the spleen goes, you got to be kidding me. I can't possibly separate this out. And so you develop symptoms of bloating and gas, right? Really foul elimination where your body just can't deal with everything, right? And so, my body starts to show those symptoms too. That would be normal. That would be maybe some reflux, right? Crops in there too. And I know people watching this, if you're dealing with reflux, I know this because nobody's ever told you this. If you're dealing with these kinds of digestive problems, I know you're doing this to yourself meal after meal after meal. On my new group coaching call, I had several people, and I'm listening to what they're eating, and I'm listening to how they're combining foods. Okay, and this is not to pick on anybody. It's just, how would you know this, right? Nobody's ever taught you this way. Describing, multiple, 10, 11, 15, 20 different things that they're eating during the day. This is not how you heal. When you have to heal your organs, you need to understand this principle of pure, impure. The spleen has to take this good stuff out, and it's a really hard job. So your task, since you have a lot of control over what you're putting into your mouth, is to eat foods that are very, very simple for the spleen to separate. Okay. I give you this in general. I talk about soups and all the delicious soups that you can make. I give you actual concrete examples of this, but you have to recognize when it's happening to you, like, oh, I just had a meal with 9 different ingredients, whoops, and your belly's all messed up and the reflux flares up and all the rest. It's like, that's a clue. And you need to recognize it for what it is. You have to catch yourself and go, I know why this is happening. I know why I'm having a flare up because I just mixed way too many things together. So I hope that makes sense. If you're seeing this and you're not part of the pivot protocol, what are you waiting for? This is your chance to beat acid reflux. I put everything together for you in one place. I'm going to teach you what not to do, all the various myths. I go through 14 different myths that are floating around on the internet and elsewhere. These myths are older than the hills. They're part of the fad diet culture that we live in, where people are really, quite honestly, very stupid about some of the things that they do. And you're digging the hole deeper and deeper, not realizing. So I go through all of these things. Here's how to stop harming your digestive organs. Okay. And then I take you through food combining, tips and tricks, targeted exercise. What's the only 3 supplements that you really need? They're dirt cheap and I don't sell them. This is just information. I tell you what brand I trust and all the rest. Like if you're finding this information and you're not part of the pivot protocol, you have a chance to beat your digestive illness and put that part of your life behind you for good. Because this is not something like other programs where somebody gives you a magic list of foods and like, this is the keto diet or the South Beach diet, or right, you want to avoid lectins or whatever, right? Whatever the fad thing of the day is, no disrespect to those people. I'm sure they're doing their best to help. There's a big flaw with that, which is, well, once you've gotten the benefit of whatever that approach does for you, then you backslide and you slide right back into illness. Why? Well, because once your symptoms change, you have to change with them. You apply these solutions according to your symptoms. And when your symptoms change, you change your routine to reflect your new symptoms. That's what I'm teaching you. That's why it's so important to understand the 4 major types of acid reflux so that you know how to treat all of them. It's not hard to do. I mean, again, I teach this so like a 12-year-old could learn it. So it's not hard to do. I'm demonstrating on the videos how to do this, but all of the material together gives you the power to not only fix your digestive problems now, but to stay healed for the rest of your life. That's got to be worth a little time and commitment on your part. Also, I've kicked off a new thing. If you want my personal help, you can just join me on group coaching and I'll just teach you personally. I'll just walk you through it. 12 weeks to total acid reflux freedom. If you commit to just getting yourself started and maybe joining group coaching for a couple of calls, you're going to find that you can apply the pivot protocol. It's not hard to do. Okay. And you'll have my personal help and feedback. Okay. So that's all I want to say for this. I hope you get started. If you haven't already, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it makes sense to you. Send me any other questions you might have. I'm happy to record these and let's get you well again. Thanks very much. Click below.